Welcome everybody to the Tuesday, September 5th, 2017 meeting of Kubernetes SIG service catalog. Aaron, since you are here, I will turn it over to you to do the thing that you do.
Cool, thanks. All right, so thanks Morgan for sharing your screen. We're going to be working off of that standard notes document. I put the link into the chat for that. As usual, we're going to be doing speaker queue. I've got my high-tech queue equipment. If you've got something you want to add, put hand plus hand or some variation thereof into the chat. I just put an example in there. And with that, I'm going to get started with 2 administrative items, actually 3. So first of all, if you'd be so kind as to put your name under the attendees row in the document, that would be greatly appreciated. Second is I wanted to give an update on our progress towards beta. So quick reminder, we decided that we are going to have our first beta release of Service Catalog coincide with the Kubernetes 1.8 release. That is scheduled for September 22nd. And there's a link there you can see to the Kubernetes release document for 1.8. Currently, I have a link here for the v0.1.0 milestone. There are 20 open issues, and I believe we have spoken about at least 3/4 of those issues. So take a look at those, and we'll be bringing those up later this week.
Do we want to talk through each of those now? We have a fairly light agenda otherwise today.
We can talk through each of those later today if we'd like, but I want to get through the rest of my announcements here. So final announcement. We do have a poll open for the face-to-face time for Kubecon. This is the final reminder to vote on that. I'm going to close the poll tomorrow, and then I will also, at that point, announce the result of the poll and request a room for us to meet at the time that's got the majority of the votes. Excuse me, the most votes, not majority. The link to the poll is the last bullet point. I have it highlighted here. So go vote there. Try to vote by the end of today. I'm going to close the polls tomorrow just before our meeting. All right, so that is it from me. Paul, you are writing up something right now. Actually, review status. All right, Paul, go ahead, take it away.
All right, let's take a look, Morgan. If you would pull up that list of issues, let's just go ahead and talk through these really quick. Just going down the list, I created this 1181 issue, which is to actually create the V1 Beta 1 API version after we finalize things. That is obviously not something that we can do quite yet, but it deserves to have an issue around it. The next one is another issue that I created to remove the alpha prefix from all API fields. We have a few fields. I think there are like 7 or 8. And this one actually has a pull request open for it. If folks want to take a look at it, we should not carry those into beta now. We have the feature gate stuff that API machinery in 1.7 added, which means that we can gate any particular field that we feel the need to with a feature gate. So I'll encourage you to go and review. I think it's pull request. It is pull request number 1184. If there are no objections, we can get that in. Otherwise, we can add feature gates where we need to. So the next one in the list is
test.
Morgan, can you go back to the list?
Yeah, I don't see the feature gate stuff in there. So
yeah, we didn't add any at first in that PR. So if people think that there need to be feature gates associated with different fields, I think that's totally fine. go ahead and indicate in a review for that pull request, and Jay can change it after we talk it out.
Okay.
So next one is API server crashes when installed on Minikube. I'm curious to know if anybody is actively working on this one.
Yep. There's a pull request associated for that in the Minikube repo. I don't remember. It's number 1173. It's listed there.
Ah, yes. I remember you mentioned that one earlier. Cool. Let's see, Aaron. I think it might.
That is actually the wrong. That is actually the wrong pull request. I will get the right pull request from the Minikube repo linked to this issue. Okay,
I'm putting you as the assignee on this one since you're working on it.
Sure.
Next one is 1167. Ensure that the creator of a service broker resource has access to get the auth secret. This one is underway right now and nearly ready to review, if I remember correctly, Jeff.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. What this one is about is right now there is nothing to prevent someone who has access to create a broker resource from stealing a service account token that they don't have access to. So this adds an SAR check and an admission controller that when you add a new service broker resource, the admission controller checks to ensure that you have the ability to get the secret that you specify as part of the broker resource. Next one is add reconciled instant state. We've talked through this one a couple times. I think we had consensus on it. Does anybody recall whether we actually had consensus?
That's the one that's on the schedule for today, right?
Let's see. Yeah, I guess it is. I'm remembering now. It was a long weekend. Okay. So we'll talk about that one immediately after this list. The next one is our original proposal for the scope of the initial beta. I wonder, do folks think that we can close this one out? I guess I had an action item from this to send a message to the Google group, and I believe that was it. So I guess I need to actually follow through on that action item.
All right. So Paul, you're going to follow through on translating 1098 into a Google group post, and are you then going to close that issue?
I am, yeah. So I'm adding this in the notes. Action item, Paul to make a post to group with scope of initial beta. Next one, I think this can actually be closed since we have worked through generations and checksums. But the next one is 1095, use generation instead of checksum. And we merged the last one for that this morning. So I'm going to close this one out now.
Morgan, do you mind writing in that issue closed by number 1145 and number 1151?
I just added a comment, which I think you'll need to edit to have the first poll on there.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Morgan.
Okay, so next is document our secret update policy, and I don't actually think I've looked at this one. Doug, do you want to talk about this one really quick?
Hold on a sec. Let me get the number.
Since you created it.
I think this is just saying you have to poke the instance or the binding, because updating the secret by itself won't work. I think that's all it is. Hold on, let me check. What's the number again? Oh.
1046?
1046, thank you.
This one?
That's the one, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just documenting that people have to do a poke. It's no code change, it's documentation change.
Okay.
If you want, you can assign that one to me, or I'll assign it to myself.
This is when we support updates, or is it?
True. Yes. Yeah. I'll assign that to myself, and I'll take it.
So should this be in O.1?
I think it should. That way people at least understand that even if we don't support updates, updating the secret will have no effect whatsoever. And we're just going to go with whatever was there when the resource was created.
Oh, this is for, okay, I keep reading this the wrong way. Yeah, this makes sense, and I think it should be documented for O.1.
So I'll take that one.
All right, so the next two are for orphan mitigation, and I have a standing action item, which I haven't gotten to yet because we got a little bit ahead of ourselves and we had to work through some of these other things with status first. My plan is to have an orphan mitigation written proposal to look at tomorrow, but that's what those two are. Let's see. Reject updates to instance that change plan when plan is not updatable. I think that one is fairly self-explanatory. If anybody is interested, I think that someone can begin working on this now. And it's only really fully testable once we support updates, but I think that someone can begin working on it now, and it will be at least partially testable before we actually have updates working. Does anybody want to put their hand up for this one? Okay. So, Michael, would you put that you are interested in working on this one in the issue so that we know that someone's got it? Okay, so the next one is validate that external ID fields do not change. I actually think that we can close this one given that we have worked out in the issue about the broker update, like what happens when you relist a catalog. I think that we've talked through this one already. And where we have landed on it is that if the ID changes but not the name, or I'm sorry, if the name changes but not the ID, that will mark service or plan as inactive and make a new service or plan for it. I think we talked through this one at the face-to-face, and I am actually not certain if somebody has put their hand up for this one.
So actually, Paul, that's one of the things I wanted to brainstorm with you on, because I think that one and Kubernetes names of service class and plan versus open source broker GUIDs are related.
Yeah, they're definitely related.
Yeah, so I wanted to brainstorm with you first before someone starts coding it up.
Okay, I think that sounds fine, and we can talk about that one tomorrow, Doug. You know what we could also do is have that conversation on this Zoom. So if other people are interested in talking through it, we could do it in public.
Yeah, well, let's see how it goes.
Okay. All right, so let's see. Next one is determine how to handle deprovision requests to an instance with bindings. We've talked through this one, and it has a pull request associated with it that I will link into the chat, because that is ready for review. It is pull request 1159. So please, if folks have some bandwidth to review, please go ahead and review that one. Next one is Kubernetes names of service class and plan. Yes.
Paul, can I, just a quick question. Actually, I can answer this myself. Never mind.
You want to state the answer for the class?
Yeah, I was asking if the PRs that solve these O.1.0 issues have O.1.0 milestones on them themselves. And I'm going through all the PRs we've talked about so far and making sure that they do.
Okay, that sounds good. I think we've gotten a little lax on the milestones. So
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
okay, good. Okay, so next one is broker update, or I'm sorry, Kubernetes names of service class and plan. We talked through this one many times. I think we made a preliminary.
Well, Paul,
Yeah.
you could skip this one because that's part of the brainstorming session we're going to have tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Next one is broker update semantics. I think that we have consensus on this. I think it needs somebody to go and implement it.
As far as things disappearing, I agree. If it involves a name change, then I think it's part of the other discussion.
Okay, do you want to, shall we hold this one until we have the grand unified theory of Kubernetes names, name changes, and external ID written out?
It can't hurt. I mean, unless someone's really bored and looking for work to do, I think it's better to wait at least a day.
Okay, sounds good. Next one is support plan updates for instances. And I think that we have talked about this one at length in the face-to-face, but I think there are things to finish up before we talk through a written design for it. I wonder how other people feel.
Anybody have feedback? Should this be an O.1?
It absolutely should be an O.1. We already decided that, I think.
Okay.
Okay. So I hear no controversy about waiting until we solve some other questions. Next one is publish Helm charts to a Helm repo. And this is assigned to Aaron. I haven't heard you mention it in a while, so I wonder if you're still working on it, or if what the status of this one is.
I haven't worked on this yet. It does need to be done for O.1, and I'll get it done.
Okay. Next one, I'm not sure if we need to keep this around. It's TPR-based storage and work.
Let's take it out.
Okay.
I'll take care of it.
And then next one is user impersonation for brokers. We've talked at length about this one. We actually have consensus on it. Matt has a pull request, but I think there are certain things that need to go in before that one. Is that accurate, Matthew? Sorry.
I don't know that there's anything really blocking this. I think that when other things go in, there's going to be additional work that needs to be done.
Okay. Maybe you can rebase it then, and we can land it, and it can be released this week if we get to it. And then the last one is scalability of retrieving service classes. It's really about splitting service class and service plan into different resources, which Morgan has a poll to do.
All right. Real quick, Niall had a hand up, so go ahead, Niall.
No, I just wrote myself that I thought that you are going to close this issue, but since you're just removing the label, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, so it seems like everything then is in some stage of completion, with the most pernicious things being the service class, and plan names. Okay, I've got to take a call, unfortunately, so I got to mute myself.
All right, so we've got 2 action items from the status reviews. Paul is going to make a proposal, is going to post the scope of initial beta to the Google group. He's also going to close the scope issue after the fact, after he makes that post. I will go through as well, and I'll make sure that all 0.1.0 PRs have that milestone on them, with the hope that it becomes easier to review the higher priority pull requests. All right. With that, anybody have any remaining questions, comments, suggestions, objections, and so on before we move on? Just put your hand up if you do. Going once. All right. So since Paul's on the phone, I'm going to swap his item and Niall's item here. And with that, Niall, go ahead and take it away with some OSB stuff.
Yeah, so this is a trivial OSB spec issue I have raised, and I just wanted to get the feedback from you. What do you think about that? So currently, only binding has the arbitrary output section in the response called credentials, and there is no way to return some like static information about the instance. For example, if you have provisioned some EC2 or whatever, and it has an IP address or URL or something like that, you can't return it from provisioning requests. You have to remember it somewhere, and once you create a binding, you have to return it as part of credentials object. And I think, like in some cases where, for example, instance is not bindable, like technically there's nothing to, like no credentials to be generated, what I see is having to create a fake binding, returning the static instance information is a little bit redundant. So my question is whether it is okay to add some section to instance response similar to credentials to return some information.
Cool. All right, Doug, go ahead first. You're up.
Yeah, so as I think I mentioned in the issue itself, I agree with the general direction you're headed. I think all that's really needed is go ahead and write up a proposal for the Open Service Broker Group to consider, and I can't imagine it would be very hard to get it passed. We may have to do a little bit of dancing, because I would want the dashboard URL to get moved into there long term, so it may need to deprecate it in its current spot, and then recommend it also be placed inside this other section. But in general, I agree with what you're proposing.
Okay, cool. Paul, go ahead.
So this is about adding information about the instance to the response from the broker for provision, right?
Yes, correct.
So the only hiccup I could see with that one in the API is that if I remember correctly from the face-to-face, that like even during an async provision, you have to be able to give that information back immediately. Does that sound accurate to people?
I'm checking right now.
Because I think you have to give back that entire response up front. And I could see there being an objection because brokers might not have all that information up front. But I definitely think this makes sense. And I think it would be good to write it up, and we can talk about it in the working group.
Anybody else have opinions? Going once? All right. So Niall, it sounds like there's an action item here for you to go write up a formal proposal for the OSB group.
Okay.
I'll put that in here. All right. Next up is Paul with reconciliation. Just a reminder that we discussed this at length on August 31st. We decided that we're going to try to reach our consensus today. So Paul, take it away. Paul, you're on mute. Not sure.
Morgan, I wonder if you would open up the issue and we can just pull up the comment where I outlined the actual API changes I proposed. So just to recap what we talked about before, basically the proposal was to add an in progress properties and external properties to the status of instance and instance credential, those representing like what the controller is currently working toward, and two, what the broker knows about. So just to talk through an example, when I make a service instance, the controller, when it started doing work, would set the in-progress properties to be, hey, I am using these, this plan name, and we talked about having the parameters and their values, unless they were sourced from secrets, in which case you would just show like redacted for the value, and then a checksum of the parameter payload. And we needed to have the checksum, and we still do need to have the checksum, because you might have parameters change out of band in a secret that wouldn't affect the instance, and we need to be able to have the checksum so that we can see when there's an update, if we should send parameters for the update. The spec, Open Service Broker API spec, says that you should only send parameters as part of an update request if the user actually wants to change them, and that's why we need the checksum. But that was the gist of it, and then when the controller's done doing work and is successful in making sure the broker knows about a particular set of properties, it will update the external properties. So that way you can see, what does this broker know about, and what am I currently doing? And I think, Morgan, you were the party that wanted to think about this. I'm sure there were other people. And so I wonder if any folks have questions, objections, plus ones, etc.
So I have a question. Oh, hand. Sorry, I forgot. The hell are we doing?
Go ahead. I put your hand up for you.
Okay, thanks. So this seems awfully similar to what Doug was proposing before, because now we need to start keeping track of what properties are modified. And it seems like the only thing missing from Doug's proposal is who is making this modification. And at that point, we would basically have that. But that was too complex. This seems pretty complex to me.
So I think it's very similar. It did maybe change a little bit based on things that I realized needed to be in there while I was writing it up. I would not say it's substantially different, but it's been a while since I looked at the original suggestion.
Right.
And I think that the user information we've already talked through about this. Actually, I think Doug's original suggestion was a write-up of a conversation that he and I had, so I guess it would maybe be kind of my original suggestion too.
I don't care whose proposal it is. I'm just saying this is not a whatever. It is just to say that we basically had an acknowledgement that we need to keep track of who's modifying anything in order for us to go and be fully compliant with the spec. And now and then we decided that we are only going to do a subset of it. And now we are basically moving towards, in my mind, again, what is very close in that front. So I guess it'd be good to go and look at that and see what the diff is there, and just either add whatever was missing from that, or to go ahead and say, we are not going to do that now because of X, Y, and Z or whatnot. But it's starting to get the point where this is getting more complex, and it might be useful to say, do we add 5% more complexity to it now and get closer to the letter of the spec? Especially because I don't think we have to allow now for multiple concurrent operations. I think the only thing that is missing from here is, okay, who made this change? And I think we would be in full compliance of the spec at that point.
It sounds to me like you're suggesting that we add the user info to each of these things, and then we're totally good.
Again, I'm so sorry. I thought we didn't have this meeting on a daily basis anymore for whatever reason. Maybe it was on last week when we were doing our thing. So I didn't dial early, and I haven't had a chance to look at this proposal, but it is very similar. And is Doug on the call?
Yeah, so Doug is waiting to speak, so let's let him go and come back to you. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, so before I get to what I wanted to say, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying, Vile. Are you saying that the proposal here is okay minus the user info, or are you concerned that what you're seeing here is too complicated and we need to consider paring it back?
I am saying that it is eerily similar to something that we dismissed earlier on as too complex.
Okay.
And it is missing, I think, given our face-to-face discussion, where we do not allow concurrent operations on a service instance. That means that we don't have to keep the array of or list of mutation operations. So I think that if we only add who made this ingress properties, I think we'll be in great shape as far as being compliant with the OSB spec. But I haven't read through the whole thing, and I wanted to say, I guess I would like to go ahead and look at the previous proposal and take a little mental diff of that and say, I think that's the only thing missing, and I think coupled with the no concurrent mutations and the ingress properties, we might be in a decent state as far as the spec compliance goes.
Okay. So now that I understand where you're coming from, okay, let me try to address your concern. So I think it would be useful to take this one step at a time, and in particular, looking at what Morgan is showing on the screen, the service instance status struct, and focusing just on the in-progress properties, which is really nothing more than a, which is really nothing more than a snapshot of the spec as seen by the broker. Okay. Now, the reason that I think we need that is because even after the service catalog controller is done with all its processing and everything's all completed, users may make changes to the spec going forward, and those spec changes may be invalid or busted or whatever, and they may not work, right? So the spec itself at some point in the future could be in a bad state. And so the reason that we're putting a copy of the spec into the status is so that they know what the broker sees. You know, basically, what is the current state of the world? So that's why that property needs to be there. So now notice it's not an array, right? So it's not meant to represent multiple operations. So the concurrency stuff that you mentioned is definitely still true, and we're not allowing an array to be in there. So does that address your concern relative to that first property?
Yes, that was not my concern. I was just saying that we do not need an array anymore.
Right, and we're not doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Right, which is
the array is
perfect.
gone.
Okay.
Right, and all I'm saying, and I understand the in-progress properties could be putting you into a bad state. I also understand that. I think the external properties is more like last known good state, I guess, if you might want to say.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and if we basically had a way to go ahead and say who put that thing into that state, then I think that would be spec compliant.
So I think it sounds to me like if we add user info to each of these things, that will be good, right? Knowing that we're going to block updates while an operation is in progress, so we don't have to deal with Ted updated it, and then Sally updated it, and then Janie updated it, and then we started doing some work again. And who do we send?
So, Doug, was that everything you wanted to say? Or did you have more?
Well, I think it kind of depends on Vile, because I'm still getting some mixed signals from you, Vile. It sounds like you're okay with the in-progress properties, and you may actually even be okay with the external properties, because that's kind of the same thing, other than it's for the external secrets. And then you're saying we need to add the user information. So I'm not quite sure what your concern is, because I think everybody agrees we need to add the user information somewhere, which is probably not part of this PR.
And I'm saying, why not?
I think it's just because another PR is doing it.
I think it would actually be fine to add this.
Guys, hold on. So I'll tell you what, it sounds like, so first of all, Paul, you're on deck here. I'm hearing, first of all, that Vile and Doug, you guys sound like you're pretty close to agreement here. So why don't you guys take this offline, talk about it after. And then meanwhile, Paul, why don't you go ahead and take the floor?
Yeah, I think I think that if each of these fields had the user information encoded on them, that things that we would be in great shape, and I would be happy to add those. And I see no reason why we couldn't just capture all of this in a single issue in a single pull request. I think we talked through the semantics at length in the face-to-face. I think we're all saying the same thing with different words and confusing each other, though. That's my suspicion.
So is there a consensus here that we're going to take the spec as is, take the proposed spec as is, add user info into each of the in-progress and external properties, and that's going to be what we implement? Go ahead, Doug.
Yes, with one caveat. Is it really user info on a per property basis or field basis, or is it for the entire resource? I thought it would be for the whole resource.
It is for the whole resource.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, then I'm in agreement, yeah.
All right, go ahead, Vile.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think what I would like to do is volunteer Doug to make sure that the original proposal that they had is in spec compliance for this one, because that had all the corner cases. And I think some of those corner cases have been removed again, because we do not allow concurrent updates. So I think the only thing that is missing is the user info, but I would like to go ahead and have Doug take a look at the original, well, okay, whatever, the original proposal that was made and say, actually, yeah, if we only add user info here, we'll be in good shape. And I think the only concern I would have is if the, because I don't think the broker needed to be told of the delta only. I think it just needed to be told who made this change. And I think if we only had a name, user info to the last known good, we will be in good shape. Or user info in progress, and then roll it forward to external state once it's done. I think we might be okay. But I can either look at that and confirm that, or you know. But since Doug volunteered, I think he should do it.
Okay. Go ahead, Paul.
I guess I'm still not sure what the request is, Vile. So the write-up that's from 16 days ago that's on the screen right now is a write-up of what Doug and I talked about just one-on-one before the face-to-face. And we talked through different aspects of this at the face-to-face. And then basically my comment there at the end is like incorporating everything that we had discussed in the face-to-face and the new version of this thing. It's not meant to be a different proposal, just one that is incorporates like 4 or 5 extra days of thought and discussion.
Okay, can we just scroll down, because that whatever is here is not necessarily what we are talking about.
Morgan, can you scroll down? Thanks.
This part again, or?
No, this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a proposal where Doug basically said we need the user info, aka who did what action to be sent the broker. And we agreed that for the first cut, we will only do who created this resource. Is
Is that
Yeah.
on the wrong page?
No, I think it's a different issue.
Vilay, I think you may be crossing some streams. Doug, I sense you're about to say the same thing, and you put your hand up, so I'll let you speak.
I was just going to say, we didn't agree to do just who created the resource, but who modified the resource last. But relate to your request or the volunteer of me that you did, I'm okay with going back and double checking to make sure this covers all the cases that we care about for spec compliance without all of the complexity of concurrent updates. I'm pretty sure it does, but if you'd like to just have a day to think about this some more and have me double check it, I'm more than okay with that.
So go ahead, Vilay.
Yeah, so I'm totally fine with that, but I don't need a day if you feel confident. I just want to make sure we have multiple solutions for the same thing. That's all.
I think it's one solution spread out over a couple different issues. I will update this to have the user info in it so we can see that.
So, okay, I hear this repeated idea of adding a user info to the entire service instance status struct or field, and that is not what it is. Paul, can you explain what is in your mind, please?
I think what what we're talking about is adding to the service instance property state the user information for who last touched it, so that in progress properties will have that, and also external properties will have that.
Okay.
Is that accurate?
Does anybody disagree with that?
Do we need it in both? I'm trying to work through that in my head. I guess it might be useful to know who made the current change versus who made the last change. Well, no. Why do we need it in both? Why not just on the status itself?
Because if I think you'd want to know if, say that like Bob provisions it, right? And the provision completes successfully, and then Sally updates it, and it's working on an update for Sally. If you just have one field on the status, then you don't have that information.
But you don't need anything other than the current request that got sent over to the broker. Right? Because let's say for a minute your broker supports a get, right? The get's never going to return to you who made the last change. So I'm not sure we technically need to save who made the last successful change, the same way we're saving the individual properties.
I could go either way on this one.
All right.
So Vilay, do we need it, knowing that we're going to send who touched it last? Either way, do we need to represent it in status?
Well, I think you need it in status, because I don't think you want to put it in spec, because you don't want the spec generation count to bump up if you twiddle this field. I do think you need it in status, but I think you just need a single one for all of status.
Vilay, did you put a hand up again? Go ahead, Vilay. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just, no, it's fine. I was just answering the question. So I guess that's what I would like to kind of go over here, is to go and say that instead of having the user info on who modified what, when, and where, that we can look at and saying, if we put it into this one thing, because I could certainly see it being useful where in progress properties, I think they were called, where that would have the user info. So if it's an async operation, you could see who requested the current ongoing operation. That I can see that being very useful. And obviously, if there's only these two places where we keep track of it, that seems attractive to me, because I think status contains all the information then at one point where you can look at it saying, here's the current ongoing operation, here's the current properties, here's the previous ones. So from there, it's trivial to go and build a diff. You can see who made both of those changes. If things go bad, you can again do a diff, right? It just seems just kind of working through that seems like it would solve a lot. It would be a clean way to solve the problem and get the spec compliance that we want.
So I am hearing two different options. One is take the proposal as is and add a user info field to the status. The other is take the proposal as is and add a user info field to both the in-progress properties and the external properties. Do we
I'm
need
okay with. I'm
vote?
okay with sticking. I'm
Do we need to
okay with
vote
sticking with.
on these, or does everyone kind of have the same idea of which way they want to go? Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I'm okay with sticking it in just the state as Paul was originally suggesting.
So
I don't have a
to
huge
be
preference, but
clear-
Paul, if you want to go there, that's fine with me.
So Doug, to be clear, you're talking about putting a user info field in progress properties and a user info field in external properties. Is that
Yeah,
right?
because they both point to the same type of structure. So yes. So one represents the user who caused the current change, and then the other one, meaning external properties, represents the user who made the last successful change.
Okay.
Yes.
Does anybody object to that?
I do not object to my own suggestion.
Going once. Put your hand up if you do object. Going once. Okay. I will write up the consensus here.
So Vile, is there anything else we need to do, or are you okay now?
Yes. Go ahead, Paul.
So I just wanted to recap for Vile. Yeah, we said that we didn't need to have these daily design meetings anymore, and then we're like, oh, wait, there's just a couple more things to talk about. And so I think that we're nearing the end of the daily design meetings, but I think we're on real soon now status for when the last one will be.
Paul, I'm going to assign an action item to you to add in the user info parts. Okay. And regarding the daily meetings, we're going to have, at this point, we're going to have daily meetings until or unless otherwise noted. But we'll probably change that as we get closer to beta and then after beta as well. So Vile, I see you have a hand up. And then Doug, was that a hand from you after Vile?
It was just to make sure you saw Vile's hand.
All right, go ahead, Vile.
Yeah, so two things. First of all, this Zoom thing is funny because it places my these windows all over. So when I'm asked to speak, I always have to go hunting. Second of all, yeah, I think I think it's fine. I mean, Paul and Doug have spent way more time on this. All I was trying to do was not to confuse this issue anymore. It just reminded me very much of something we discussed before, and I just wanted to make sure that we address both issues in a way that is consistent, and we don't have to hopefully have to come back to this anymore. So I think we are all good.
Okay. Do we have any other comments, questions, suggestions, objections, so on and so forth to this item before we move on? Going once. All right. Do we have any other business that we need to talk through today?
Nothing here.
Okay, going once. All right. We will have a meeting tomorrow, September 6th, same time, same place. I believe there was at least one item that someone mentioned that they want to talk about tomorrow. I don't remember what it is, so if you have one, please add it to tomorrow's agenda. I'll create the boilerplate for that right after this meeting. Otherwise, with that, I will see everybody tomorrow. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.